Are you ready for the biggest prophetic events of the century? You won't believe what's happening in Israel right now. From ancient prophecies being fulfilled to jaw-dropping revelations that will blow your mind, the next few months will be unlike anything we've ever seen before. So buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. Get ready for a journey into the heart of Israel's prophetic destiny. The next few months will be unforgettable, and you won't want to miss a second of it. Israel has always been a focal point of prophecy, with numerous predictions about the future of the Holy Land and its people scattered throughout the Bible. As we move closer to the end of days, many believe that we are witnessing the fulfillment of these prophecies right before our eyes. Here are 3 prophetic events in Israel that are set to take place in the near future and could change the course of history. The rebuilding of the temple. The significance of the temple may be traced back to the days of the first temple, which was established by King Solomon in the 10th century BC. The temple was a central place of worship for the Jewish people, and its significance can be traced back to those days. According to Jewish tradition, the temple was the physical embodiment of God's presence on earth. It was also the site of many important events in Jewish history, such as the consecration of the Ark of the Covenant, the dedication of the Second Temple by Ezra and Nehemiah, and the rededication of the temple by the Maccabees after it had been desecrated by the Greeks. In addition, the temple was the site of many important events in Jewish history. The Jewish people were forced into exile and dispersion for many years after the Romans were responsible for the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in the year 70 AD. This event served as a turning point in the history of the Jewish people. But throughout all of this time, the Jewish people never forgot how significant the temple was to them, and they never stopped yearning for its reconstruction. In the Jewish prayer known as the Amidah, there is a petition that asks for the rebuilding of the temple and the resumption of Jewish worship at the site. This longing is expressed in the prayer. Many Jewish people believe that the reconstruction of the temple is an essential step that must first be taken before the Jewish people can be redeemed and the Messianic era can begin. The reconstruction of the temple is seen as a symbol of the spiritual and national restoration of the Jewish people, and it would indicate a return to a time of greater spiritual purity and closeness to God. The temple is considered as a symbol of the spiritual and national restoration of the Jewish people. The reconstruction of the temple is also considered as a way to offer greater unity to the Jewish people, who have been divided for a very long time due to variations in the interpretation and practice of their sacred traditions. The reconstruction of the temple, on the other hand, is a difficult matter on both the political and religious fronts. The area known as the Temple Mount, on which the temple formerly stood, is regarded as one of the holiest places in Islam, and it is currently under the hands of Muslims. Any effort to restore the temple would almost certainly spark a huge dispute, not only between Jews and Muslims, but also with the rest of the international community. Many Jews are beginning to doubt whether it is even possible or desirable to restore the temple at this time, because of the possibility of civil turmoil and violent conflict. In addition, the reconstruction of the temple poses significant concerns regarding the fundamental characteristics of Jewish identity and the methods of religious activity. There is a school of thought among Jews that contends the centrality of the temple to modernized Judaism is an antiquated concept, and that the religion may flourish without it. Others are of the opinion that the reconstruction of the temple is an essential step that must be taken in order to achieve greater Jewish unity and the revival of traditional Jewish practice. One of the difficulties associated in restoring the temple is the lack of widespread agreement over the appropriate procedures to follow. The temple was demolished around 2,000 years ago, and as a result, many of the temple's original characteristics and relics have been lost or ruined. In anticipation of the reconstruction, certain organizations have already started preparing the necessary materials, such as blocks of marble and embellishments made of gold. There is a lack of consensus, however, regarding the particulars of the temple's design, including its actual location and architectural components. In spite of these obstacles, there has been a rise in the number of Jews in Israel who are advocating for the reconstruction of the temple in recent years. Some organizations have even gone so far as to try to begin preparing for the basis for its reconstruction by carrying out archaeological studies and excavations in the area surrounding the Temple Mount. The Temple Institute, which has been working since 1987 to prepare for the rebuilding of the temple by creating and preserving the necessary artifacts, utensils, and priestly garments, is one of the many organizations that are dedicated to promoting the rebuilding of the temple. There are also a number of organizations that are dedicated to promoting the rebuilding of the temple. To summarize, the reconstruction of the temple in Jerusalem is a complicated and multifaceted matter that holds a great deal of importance for both Jews and Christians. In the eyes of Jewish people, the reconstruction of the temple is an essential step on the path to the Jewish people's redemption and restoration, and it is also considered as a symbol of national and religious pride. The gathering of the exiles. When Naftali Hertz Imber penned the wonderful poem Hatikva in 1878, he emphasized the Jewish people's 2,000-year-long aspiration to be a free nation in our own territory. 2 decades later, in 1897, the First Zionist Congress declared the core objective that Zionism strives to establish a homeland for the Jewish people in Eretz, Israel, secured by public law, primarily for the purpose of reuniting exiles in the land of Israel. Just a few years later, the British government viewed with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. In the Balfour Declaration of 1917, 100 years ago next year, and just over 3 decades later, the State of Israel was established. It took little more than half a century to evolve from a political concept to statehood, but Jews' desire to return to their homeland dates back to the beginning of our nation's history. What are its historical origins? How far back in history can we trace allusions to this ideal? Kibbutz Guyot, or the ingathering of the exiles, is a biblical term for the gathering of Israel. It is the promise made by Moses to the people of Israel prior to their entry into Eretz Israel in Sefer Devarim, chapter 30. Moses predicted that the people of Israel would sin in their new land and hence be deported. He did, however, predict the people's eventual return to their country, and it will be that when all of these things come upon you, the blessing and curse that I have placed before you, that you will contemplate in your heart, among all the nations where the Lord your God has banished you, and you will go back to the Lord your God. Then the Lord your God will return your exiles and have mercy on you. He will reassemble you from all the nations where the Lord your God has scattered you. Even though your exiles are in the farthest reaches of the heaven, the Lord your God will bring you back, and the Lord your God will bring you to the country that your forefathers possessed and give you possession of it. During the Babylonian exile, the prophets Isaiah and Ezekiel comforted the people of Israel by promising a future return of the exiles to the land of Israel. And he shall raise a banner to the nations, and he shall gather the lost of Israel, and the scattered ones of Judah from the 4 corners of the world, says Isaiah. Verse 12 of Isaiah chapter 11. The same message is repeated in Jeremiah chapter 29. And I will be found by you, says the Lord, and I will restore your captivity and gather you from all the nations and regions where I have driven you, and I will return you to the spot where I banished you. Verse 14. Ezekiel, who has previously been in exile, says, I will accept you with a pleasant odor when I take you out of the countries, and I will gather you from the lands where you were scattered, and I will be consecrated through you in the sight of the nations. Verse 41 of chapter 20. Following their expulsion and the Roman conquest of Jerusalem in 70 CE, the bulk of Jews were dispersed throughout the world. Since then, Jews have never given up hope of returning to Israel. This ideal remained at the heart of our daily prayers as we updated the traditions of our temple. Every time we sing the Amidah on a weekday, we say the Bracha, sound the huge shofar for our liberty, raise the banner high to gather our exiles, and gather us from the 4 corners of the earth. Happy are you, Lord, who gathers his scattered people Israel. This benediction was inserted by Chazal, our sages in the Amidah, which is a major part of Jewish liturgy. It is the first benediction in which an appeal is made regarding Jewish patriotism and the restoration of the Hebrew nation as an independent nation. The Rambam associated its manifestation with the arrival of the Messiah. Maimonides writes in the Law of Kings, in the future, the Messianic king will arise and restore the Davidic kingdom to its former state and original authority. He will erect the temple and gather the scattered Israelites. All the regulations will be reinstated in his days as they had been previously. Sacrifices will be made, and the sabbatical and jubilee years will be properly observed as prescribed by the Torah. According to Maimonides, of all the tasks ascribed to the Mashiach, the Torah confirmed only one. Then the Lord your God will bring back your exiles. The Messiah is the regatherer of Israel's exiles. Some Jewish scholars may hold a different opinion than Maimonides. They claim that the Torah attests to an era rather than a person, a period in which the Israelites returned to their homeland the land of Israel. While God's hand is in the events of the founding of the state of Israel, the act of assembling the exiles of Israel in the land of Israel will bring about the coming of the Messiah. Rav Zvi Yehuda Ha-Rav, one of the religious Zionist movement's leaders, Ha-Cohen Cook, used the quote from the answer book Yeshuat Malko, noting that this is a tremendous mitzvah because the gathering is Achalta de Gula, the beginning of the redemption. Charity Judaism and Chabad accept the Rambam's writings literally. The Messiah is tasked with completing the reunification of Israel's exiles. In more recent times, Napoleon called all the Jews of Asia and Africa to unite under his flag in order to restore the ancient Jerusalem in his proclamation to the Jews of Asia and Africa in 1799. The Zionist establishment of Kibbutz Galuyot set in motion the movement of legitimate and illegal immigrants to Israel. It was a tangible result of millennia of longing. The ALIYAH bet was the illegal immigration to Israel under the regulations of the British Mandate, notably during World War II and the Holocaust. The Yishuv organized the ALIYAH bet from 1934 until the establishment of the state in 1948. During ALIYAH bet's 14 years of operation, 115,000 Jews made ALIYAH to Israel. To resist the decree, they came by sea, land, and air. The Exodus boat carried 4,500 people. The largest armada, comprised of the ships Pan York and Pan Crescent, known as the Komimut and the Atzmaut, transported 15,000 souls to Palestine at once, including my father. When Israel was eventually established in 1948, the Declaration of Independence codified this ideal. The state of Israel will be open for Jewish immigration and the ingathering of the exiles. The concept of ALIYAH, literally moving up, embodies the ideal because the Holy Land is thought to be spiritually higher than any other place. The mass wave of Aliyot, or Jewish immigration to the land and the state of Israel, has been compared to the Exodus from Egypt. This Aliyah of Jews from dozens of nations on every continent, speaking over 100 different languages, has been the essence of Israel's development, both before and after the state's establishment. They came from Russia before the Revolution, from Germany and Austria fleeing the Nazis, and from the ashes of the Holocaust in Poland, Hungary, Romania, and Czechoslovakia. They were ejected by Arab anti-Zionism from Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and North Africa. They came from Latin America, Turkey, and Iran, fleeing ruthless military juntas and the Ayatollahs. They were just rescued from the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and Ethiopia. Although 3 million Jews have emigrated to Israel since the country's inception, it has been a constant challenge to absorb these vast numbers. But the large number of immigrants has created a cultural diversity that has tremendously improved life in Israel. We now have our own live, breathing, thriving state. Every Shabbat and festival, we pray in shul for Medinat Israel, pleading with God to bless the country of Israel in the words of Moses. Bring them swiftly and uprightly to your city Zion and to Jerusalem, the habitation of your name, as it is stated in your servant Moses' Torah. Even if your outcasts are at the ends of the globe, the Lord, your God, will gather you. He will fetch you, and the Lord, your God, will bring you to the country your fathers owned, and you will possess it. Although the development of Kibbutz Galuyot is far from finished, the ingathering of Jews from around the world continues, whether for reasons of idealism and religious fulfillment, or because of the persistent challenges of Jews in many places. Whatever country we're born in, we know, in the words of Imber's poetry, that we may be a free nation in our own territory. The Battle of Armageddon. The final conflict that will take place between human governments and God is referred to as the Battle of Armageddon. These governments and the people who support them continue to rebel against God by refusing to acknowledge His authority over the world. At the conclusion of the Battle of Armageddon, human authority over the world will come to an end. Daniel 2:44. Only once in the book of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 16, is the word Armageddon used in the Bible. According to Revelation, which is a book of prophecy, the site that is named in Hebrew Armageddon will be the location where the kings of the entire inhabited earth will be gathered together to fight in the great day of God the Almighty. Revelation chapter 16, verse 14. Who will be the warriors during Armageddon? Jesus Christ will prevail over those who oppose God by leading a heavenly army to victory. Revelation chapter 19, verses 11 to 16, 19 to 21. Those who rebel against the authority of God and who hold God in contempt are considered to be among these foes. Ezekiel 39:7. Would the actual battle for Armageddon take place somewhere in the Middle East? No. The battle for Armageddon will not be confined to a single location. Rather, it will take place across the entirety of the globe. The name Armageddon, which is derived from the Hebrew phrase Har Megiddon, literally translates as Mountain of Megiddo. Megiddo was at one time a city located in the land that belonged to ancient Israel. A number of decisive battles, some of which are mentioned in the Bible, are said to have taken place in the area at various times throughout history. It is not possible for Armageddon to be a literal reference to the region near ancient Megiddo. There is not a significant mountain there, and even the entirety of the low plain of Jezreel that is adjacent to it would not be sufficient to hold all of people who will fight against God. Instead, Armageddon refers to the global situation in which nations from all over the world come together for one final rebellion against God's dominion. During the Battle of Armageddon, what kind of conditions may we expect to find? Even while we do not know how God will utilize his power, we do know that he will have access to weapons similar to those that he has used in the past. These weapons include things like hail, earthquakes, floods, downpour, fire and sulfur, lightning, and diseases. At least some of God's enemies will end up killing each other as a result of the confusion, but in the end, they will understand that it is God who is fighting against them. Will the end of the world occur as a result of Armageddon? Due to the fact that the earth is mankind's permanent home, this will not be the end of our planet. Armageddon does not end up being the end of humanity. Rather, it ends up being the salvation of humanity, since a large number of God's followers will survive. The word world, however, can be used in the Bible to allude to an evil human society that is in opposition to God. This is one of the meanings of the word. Armageddon, understood in this context, will bring about the end of the world. Matthew 24:3 said, from the King James Version of the Bible, "When exactly will the end of the world occur?" Jesus said the following in reference to the Great Tribulation, which would climax in the Battle of Armageddon. Concerning the day and hour nobody knows, neither the angels of the heavens nor the Son, but only the Father. In spite of this, the Bible does reveal that the Battle of Armageddon will take place during the unseen presence of Jesus, which began in 1914. The verses in Matthew 24:37-39. These three prophetic events in Israel are just a few examples of the many prophecies that are believed to be coming true in our time. As we witness the unfolding of these events, it's important to remember that prophecy is not just a prediction of the future, but a call to action. The fulfillment of prophecy should inspire us to take action, to work towards creating a better world, and to prepare ourselves for the future. Thank you so much for watching our video today, and we hope to see you in our next video.